I do believe that it's never about just the medicine. It's whatever is working for you in your particular case. Going and blowing your brains out with some bufo DMT might not be good for you, but it might be amazing for this other person.
When we talk about mixed modalities and using psychedelics together, should my heart begin to beat a little faster with fear and nervousness?
It's sometimes a lot harder to feel our own shadows and our own depth of grief and sadness and darkness inside. And that's probably the hardest work that can be done out there. And psychedelics are very good for that.
You took the conversation in a way that I think is really going to be interesting.
I'd say to people, if you're not feeling good or something is not working or you want to make a change or you feel stuck or, in a rut, get some support, work with someone that'll help you. But if you don't reach out, it's like, how is anyone going to know how to help you?
Welcome back to the Webdelics podcast, and boy, oh boy, do we have a guest in the house today. Beth Weinstein, welcome to the Webdelics show.
Thank you for having me here, Scott.
I am absolutely delighted, and the topic is really interesting. We're going to talk about using multiple psychedelics together and what that can mean for someone on their personal or professional journey, whether it is moving into a more spiritually connected or aligned space, moving into the next level of whatever it is or wherever you want to go in life, or simply transforming into something different than you might have been before. We've never gone into this exact topic before, so I'm quite curious about where this will take us. But when we talk about mixed modalities and using psychedelics together, should my heart begin to beat a little faster with fear and nervousness? Talk to us a little bit about what exactly that is and how it looks.
Sure, if you want, of course. Yeah, it's funny because even when you said mixed modalities, I was like, oh yeah, what does that really mean? You and I were speaking about this interview previously, and my work is around business and entrepreneurship and people helping my clients grow and expand in their business, and not just their business, but their lives. And I also work in the psychedelic space as well. Again, both in this way of growth and expansion, and also helping people who have businesses that bridge into the psychedelic space, and then working privately with teams and individuals to grow and get out of a funk. And, like a lot of people come to me saying they feel stuck or things have been kind of running the same way for so long. And the mass media over the last 5 or 6 years or so loves writing about psychedelics giving people this optimization, right? Like, yeah, we've all heard of like the tech dudes doing psychedelics, or Burning Man just ended, and that whole scene, which I've been to multiple times. But and what I was saying to you is that it's never just about the psychedelic itself. I always say I would love it if the psychedelic would just give us all the answers in one go, because then we'd all be, ascended masters by now. But, even if someone has this intention to go in there and work on a business problem or something in their life, or healing or growth or expansion, it's never just really going to come through one psychedelic journey. There's this talk of the word integration, and what that means to integrate. And this is where the other modalities come in. So what I find is, hand in hand with psychedelic experiences, these other modalities, for example, what I practice is transformational neuro-linguistic programming, which is a way of uncovering subconscious beliefs or not conscious beliefs, or programs that are running behind the scenes that most people don't even know is running in their lives. So when someone says they're stuck, or, there's a block, or something's not working, or I can't figure something out, or I've been trying so long and there's just something not moving, this is where this modality comes in really handy. And I found when you pair it together with a psychedelic experience, either separately or a low dose actually in a session, it works really beautifully. And it's a really great integration tool for the actual psychedelic experience itself. Same with, let's say, somatic therapy modalities, which I've also been trained in. I bring that into my work. Working with the body, the breath, the mind. How many people out there say they're struggling with something, but then their mind is running all over the place and they're just, wired and distracted and nonstop. Well, of course, there's no space for then the problem to come through. And just like all the great minds of the world, there's this kind of what I believe to be all humans are essentially channels, right? Like we are just here channeling what I believe to be our soul's purpose, what we're here to do. And when I say that, even that is constantly changing. Your soul's purpose from last year might be completely different, or from 20 years ago, it's probably definitely different. So we're ever evolving beings. And the multiple modalities piece is bringing in the medicine, the psychedelic, the entheogen, and then also having some sort of what I call like a moment to moment practice. And that's those two pair together, along with some of these other amazing modalities, that address the mind, the body, the spirit. Maybe it's creativity. Maybe it's actually just play. The amount of teams that I've worked with or executives that I've worked with that are really struggling, what I find is they've just been working their butt off for 30 years. And I get it. I'm a Capricorn rising. I understand that mentality of just working. But it's kind of the definition of insanity in a nutshell. It's like if you've been doing the same thing over and over and over and something feels stuck or you're unfulfilled or you're just not inspired by your work anymore, then you have to do something totally different. Because the solution can never come through the same thing you've been trying. And that's actually where most people are pretty, like, oh, maybe I should try something the polar opposite.
Right.
And so that's where bringing it. And there's many ways to access these kind of non-ordinary states, like psychedelic states. It can come through breath work. It can come through dance and movement. It can come through music. It can come through creativity. How many people have, gone for a run and felt that high and that their mind went blank, or done something fun and creative and they felt so alive, or maybe gone, I don't know, downhill skiing or something that just gets you out of the stuckness of the day-to-day mind that's constantly distracted by the fear and the doubts and the monkey, and into this place of a non-ordinary consciousness where then you can access the information, the new ideas, the innovations. This is also why, by the way, that, like the tech startup world has gotten this kind of reputation for like, well, a lot of people are doing psychedelics. Well, hey, they're also innovating constantly. So yeah, so that's kind of what we were talking about. Yeah.
I'm curious. Let's say I am a random entrepreneur who has been in business, let's say 15, 20 years. Maybe I run a pawn shop. I'll just say that randomly, maybe because I was watching too much TV. Oh, whatever. And I am feeling as though my soul's purpose when I founded that shop has changed. I don't know what it is, and I don't know how to evolve my business or if I should just sell it and completely, whatever. And so I end up talking to you. Now, here I am, some random ordinary person looking to shift my business direction. I can imagine myself easily being convinced by the value of a fancy sounding set of words like neuro-linguistic programming, right? Because that has scientific grounding. It appeals to me as someone who has spent my whole life in the world of business as a business person. I could even imagine myself maybe with a little bit of resistance, but after a while, giving into it, spending more time doing things like running or maybe meditating or going into these sort of different states where I can clear my mind and get out of this cycle of just doing the same thing that I've been doing over and over again. All of those are one thing, but how do you approach an entrepreneur and how do they respond when you first raise the P word?
The P word? Pawn?
You
mean psychedelic?
You know what
it's so funny. SP. Yeah, I just want to make sure I have the right P.
Yes, you definitely do.
Pawn and psychedelic. I love it. So here's what I've noticed. because I've actually worked with people who fit this description, who are actually in the, like extremely successful range, multiple millions, running like a large company. I've helped people go through like full exits and kind of restructuring of their entire business, but it's never about the business, and it's actually never about the exiting or the, it's so much deeper than that. It's about them as a leader, as a person. And what happens is, as we grow older and we're in our comfort zone, if you've been running this pawn shop for, 15, 20 years, and it's doing well and pays the bills and put your kids through college and maybe even got you a second home and all that, life is comfortable, you're going to be less inclined to want to make changes. But what happens, and I've had a lot of clients, they tend to come to me in their midlife range, mid 40s to mid 50s, some even in their 60s and 70s, believe it or not. I've had someone totally start a new business at the age of 72, but they start to feel, especially in the last 5 years, we've all been kind of seeing like, oh, wow, life is short, like death is real. It comes without warning, that this body will be a corpse. By the way, that's from a Buddhist text, but really just this awareness that we do only live once. And when you hit this midlife stage, if you're starting to feel this level of unfulfillment, especially the kids are gone, house is paid off, you've maybe traveled everywhere you want to, it's like, what else is there, right? Like, of course you can buy more things, but that doesn't fulfill you. So what happens is I get a lot of people looking for that. Like, I feel like something is next. I don't know what it is, but I can feel the desire for more like inspiration and fulfillment that I felt when I started this business when I was 23 or whatever, then, most of the people that come to me are seeking psychedelics. I don't offer psychedelics to people unless they're seeking it. It's just the way I work, but it's one of many tools. It's not, I actually don't think they're for everyone. I think it can help certain people in certain ways, depending on what the situation is. I have worked with a lot of people that won't touch psychedelics at all. There is that. I currently have at least one client that I can think of that just doesn't, it's not part of her path. But of course she does other, she's into other ways of reaching non-ordinary states that, help her grow into the direction she wants to grow in. Some people, I think the people that are not at all into them to the point where they're freaked out by psychedelics, well, there's many other great coaches out there that don't ever mention the word psychedelic. But I think, what we've seen change over, especially the last 5 years, is the conversation, right? It's like, it's hitting the mainstream. It's, becoming decriminalized and legalized in many places. I think also a lot of these people that I always say, like, the root of anxiety and depression in our society, especially here in America or the Western world in general, is rooted in the unfulfillment of people's, careers and jobs, because our, living that has to be made for most people, it's very connected to who we are. It becomes our identity at some points. It's, they say we spend a third of our life working, and, and it doesn't matter if it's a job or you're a stay-at-home mom. It's like when there's a big transition, like let's say a stay-at-home mom is very fulfilled, but then her kids are now teenagers and they're starting to drive, and she's seeing like they're going to be gone in 2 years. What am I going to do for the next, 30, 40 years of my life? And, even if you can retire financially, I think it's part of the human condition to expand. Like, we're just like nature, and trees grow and grow and grow and grow and grow until, some are hundreds of years old, and then maybe they die. It's like anything in nature is in an expansion phase. And so what happens is, if someone's getting to this comfort zone that they've been running in for like the last 10 years, and they're starting to feel something, or maybe they've had a crisis in their life, that one I see a lot, or some kind of big transition, that's where, maybe they've tried the antidepressants, or maybe they've tried talk therapy for the last 20 years. Maybe they've gone on, couples counseling, or gone on one retreat, but they're just starting to see like, oh, these things aren't working, or numbing themselves with something, alcohol, TV, shopping, whatever it is. There's a breaking point for a lot of people. And that's where, and I'm not here to say like psychedelics solve everything, but there's more and more research coming out that, when you use these with an intention and have the proper integration support, the ongoing day-to-day, moment-to-moment support, then you can actually make a greater change a lot quicker with, in my opinion, a lot less pain. By the way, not to say psychedelics make everything easy and pretty. They can be very, they can bring up a lot. Let's just say that. But it's brought up for your growth and transformation, because it can't just be, stuck down there for another 20 years, because that's essentially what's keeping you stuck. Yeah. So does that make sense? Yeah. Did I even answer your question? I don't know.
You more than answered the question, and you took the conversation in a way that I think is really going to be interesting. Understanding that no matter what modality or what psychedelic or psychedelics you end up using, that actual experience, the trip or the journey, is only the first part of the journey, if it's, or the first part of your transformation, if it's going to be meaningful, something meaningful at all. With all of that assumed, for those who approach you in this situation and say, look, I've heard that psychedelic therapy may help me get past this sticking point, help connect me with that purpose, help make me just feel refreshed and alive again as a business person, is there a particular substance or set of substances that you have found to be more effective for them, that you draw them to? And are there multiple journeys that they may go on? And if so, does the substance that they may be working with change as they go on their journey?
Yeah, it's funny because there's probably a lot of opinions on this. I don't think there's one magic pill, let's say for anybody or for one thing. I know, the world that we're living in right now, and one of the safest and most easily accessible and somewhat, somewhat, I say decriminalized because it's just less trouble. Let's just say that is psilocybin mushrooms, the journey with what people might call magic mushrooms. It does tend to be safer. I wouldn't say it's easier. It's a little more controllable, meaning the dosage and the working with it in a session is a little easier than, let's say, something like ayahuasca, which is one of my own personal medicines that I would call like a big part of my path. First of all, I'm not really properly trained to serve ayahuasca. I do believe it, it has a certain approach and a tradition that not everybody follows. So there's arguments against this, but the world that I come from, ayahuasca follows a tradition, but it's also very unpredictable. You can have a tiny dose and go really deep, and it could be wild and crazy, and you could have a large dose and maybe don't feel anything. With mushrooms, it's a little more predictable. You can really get to know the strain. You can get to know the batch that you grew or got from your friend that grows or whoever. And it tends to be kind of a safe bet in general. I personally don't use a lot of synthetics myself, sometimes once in a blue moon. But I do think they're great for certain situations and certain journeys, MDMA or ketamine. It kind of depends on what's going on in that person's life. For the kind of work that I do, and I try to make this really clear, like even though I'm very well trained in a lot of trauma, and I consider myself also trauma informed, like I know how to deal with trauma in a session or a ceremony, but I don't treat like really heavy, complex PTSD type trauma. So that's where, there's, and even then, like I believe there's very few people out there that really know what they're doing. There's people that say they do, but not a lot. But if it's something like, someone who's considered, there's this term that's been used in the psychedelic space. They call them healthy normals. I think it sounds terrible, but it's a very good description of, people that are generally like doing okay, like, I mean, to me, everybody has something, right? It's like, look at our world. But you're kind of stable, your mental health is fairly okay. And maybe you're looking for some level of optimization or trying to understand this one problem, or going through just, a big transition in life. Maybe it's not traumatic, but it's big. That's where, a dose of mushrooms can be very effective. There's different theories about this. There's people out there that tout like, oh, you just do one hero's journey, as in a large journey or a large dose. And then, everything will be solved. I actually tend to disagree with that. I do think there is a time and place for that. I don't think it's for everybody. And I think depending on what the approach is, my approach is a little bit different. I think it's actually a little detrimental to have too high of a dose, because then the person's not even present. So I weave in other modalities like astrology and energy work, and also, preparation, integration with some mindset and this reprogramming modality. And in order to really get the effects, you have to be a certain level of present in the psychedelic space, which for like a typical person that doesn't have let's say a daily meditation practice, that can actually be very challenging, especially with the energy of the world right now. I mean, people don't talk about this as much as I think they should, but we have to factor into what's happening on a larger scale, like on the earth, in the stars, in the entire universe. Everything affects the psychedelic experience. The moon, the day that you do it, the phase of the moon, what the moon is conjunct. I mean, people might hear this and think it's a crock, but I've been doing this long enough to have proven it. Like, I've seen what happens if you take a mushroom on a full moon versus a different moon. I mean, it's a very different experience. So, but the key is to be present with the experience, so you can actually harvest what you're getting from the journey. Meaning, if you're going in with a particular intention and a question that you have and want answers to, you have to be able to navigate the journey to get it. Not to say every time you're going to get your answers either. I mean, very often, I would say actually, a lot of the time, something else will come through. And they may seem unrelated, like, oh, well, something from my childhood came through that session. Why would that have anything to do with why I'm stuck in my business? Well, that's interesting. Let's look into that. And, after doing some integration work through other modalities that don't involve medicine, you might find that, oh, there's a pattern that's been running you since your childhood that was ingrained from this one programming in your family history. And by the way, this is all just normal. It's not bad. It's pretty much everybody has something that runs them like this. And when you start to uncover it, it starts to transmute and change itself. And this is where life starts, let's say, interacting and being experienced in a different way. So it's not always getting the one answer from the psychedelics. It's, what is emerging, what needs to come through, what's there to be seen and purified. Purified, I won't even go into that. Maybe I should not use that term here, but what needs to be seen and dealt with to then actually bring it up to the surface and work with it. And, you don't have to like fix anything. It's not about fixing. It's about the integration process is actually the opposite. It's about bringing it all in and seeing it all and changing your relationship to it. I mean, if you subscribe to the fact that we create our entire reality, which I do, and if I think those who can stop and actually take a look at their life, they can see, well, I created everything, so if you want to create something new, you have to work with like, well, what's in the way, what's getting, what's coming up, what are the patterns that are running, what's that stuckness that you're feeling. And it might be something that totally shocks you and surprises you. And then, next thing you know, you're like, wow, maybe I should go do therapy for the next, couple of years. And this is why I think it's been interesting to watch the media just touting psychedelics as this quick fix, but it's not, it can be at times. I mean, I've had pretty miraculous quick fixes, but at the same time, it's so much deeper than that. Like it's like no problem is just, like one little strategy. It's usually from deep within, usually something that's not in the consciousness, because if it was already in your consciousness, you would have already changed it. And so that's where the psychedelic can be really, really helpful, along with the tools, the integration, the other modalities, and really like working with the psychedelic experience in your day to day. It's not a one night thing or a 5-hour thing. It's day to day. And so when it comes to the actual medicines, people have preferences. There's certain ones that I don't work with at all because I'm not properly trained in them, and I think they're for special use cases, let's say. But psilocybin, MDMA, I have referred clients to certain other things where it's like, hey, maybe that would help you, or if they're being called to it. That's another thing, is I really believe on some level that if you're going to go work with, let's say, some form of DMT or iboga or ibogaine, I mean, those are pretty life-changing experiences, and they can also be extremely ungrounding and destabilizing, which, thankfully some people are talking about. But we have to take into account all of your life. The goal is not to destabilize you so much that your entire life goes up into flames. It's to take small steps into making transformation and change. And that's why working with these kind of more accessible psychedelic experiences, maybe starting off with a lower amount, or, like even maybe microdosing. I mean, I've been working with psychedelics for over 30 years. And one of my most powerful experiences that had a profound impact on my life was with a 0.5 gram of mushrooms, which is pretty small. It's like a museum dose. And in a practice session in a training program that I was in. So I wasn't even with like a real, it was like my peer. And it was just amazing. And I'm, it's like, oh, it's not the amount of medicine. It's so much deeper than that. It's what you're doing with that experience. Yeah, I hope that answers it.
It did. And one thing that I really enjoyed about what you just shared with us is what I'll just call expectation management. There is this hype out there. Oh, you have this one session, as you said a couple of times, and all of a sudden, 20 years of child abuse and having your entire family lost in a car accident and the entire economic disaster that your business has been through in the past 5 years are suddenly gone and you're fine. It's not like that at all. And you explicitly refer to integration as a process. Look, I'm going to keep it real with you, Beth, and I'll just sort of share this to launch you into a discussion, perhaps a little bit more about integration as a process, or perhaps moving in a different direction. I'm curious as to where you'll go, which is that, for instance, when I did my psilocybin ceremony, I set an intent. It was implicit within that intent that there was a question. I had heard over and over again, you will get an answer to your question. It might not be what you expect, but that you will hear something in response to that. We had an incredible experience. It was under the moon, by the way, and there were clouds in the moon and all that sort of stuff. So it was really, I felt very aligned and centered and present during the experience. But when we had the integration session the next morning, I was ticked off because I did not get the answer to my question. I didn't get what I felt I was looking for. And I remember talking to the facilitator and saying, he said, how are you feeling? And I said, pensive. No, I'm kind of mad because everyone else gets their question answered. Why not me? Well, we did a little bit more of a deep discussion, and I realized that, sort of like what you're saying, that there was a lot more to this. And back to the theme of expectation setting, I ended up working with a spiritual guide who had extensive psychedelic facilitation experience for 1.5 years with tears and insight and journaling and meditation and prayer, all these sorts of things that I had to find time to do in an already busy schedule to understand everything that happened. And interestingly enough, at one point I said, should I be microdosing? Maybe that would help. And he said, Scott, the last thing you need to be doing is taking anything else right now. Let's work through this, and then we'll talk about all that sort of stuff. And that's when I realized what you're talking around depth and being prepared for the long haul is really what this is all about. Now, it has impacted my future. How rare is someone needing the sort of time that I'm talking about? There were things I will just add before you answer that got resolved instantly, right? Like issues I had with my parents as well as a former boss I had actually were resolved instantly. These resentments went away and they've never come back. But those were tertiary sorts of things, right? Like when you set expectations for clients, or if people who might be considering this sort of transformational journey for their entrepreneurial experience, what do you tell them? And are there specific ways that you think integration can be more or less effective or not?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I will acknowledge that it is possible to get those instant healings. I mean, my first ayahuasca journey, showed me something. It took maybe 2 seconds, and it was like, wow, life-changing relationship with my parents and my past. Yeah. I mean, it was like, whoa, okay, that was an instant healing. And, it's like, this is where, I mean, even Jung talked about integration. It was never connected to a psychedelic experience, like with actual psychedelics. It was really about it's integration as a human, becoming more whole. We're on this journey until our death. And even then, that's a whole other conversation. We're on a continuous growth and expansion journey. And we go through cycles in life, just like everything in nature. There's ups and there's downs, there's ins and outs, like the breath. And, I don't think there is like a particular time frame. It's more, I always say I've been doing integration work for the last, 15, 20 years straight. But I'm also one of those people that I like having support in my life. I have a really good somatic therapist who also understands psychedelics. I feel like I grow exponentially from it. I've always had coaches. But, if someone's maybe working on one thing, and let's say they're going through a big change or transition in life, that's a big one we see. Like something happened that kind of rocked their world, and they're looking for, processing through it of some sort. Maybe there's grief or no understanding, or they're feeling like, what's next? I'm lost. Like, I don't know where to go in my life. Maybe you get to a point that feels good and you're like, oh, you know what? I think I'm going to try this on my own for a while. I believe that every human being, we need each other in some way. It doesn't have to come through paying someone to help you, but we're relational human beings. We're meant to do this journey with others supporting us in community. Most of the world is not in community like we're meant to be. That's part of the number one part of the problem. And you can't really dump all your problems on, let's say, your partner or your kids or whatever it is. So there's just this need for connection and being seen and heard, and that's it. Most people don't even have that opportunity. So that's where, if you're finding that works for you, maybe it's joining a men's group or a women's group or a integration group or some kind of support circle. But I don't know. I wouldn't say there is one particular time frame. I have seen people have miraculous results in just, like a container I hold in, which is some preparation, integration. I also, like I said, I weave in this kind of separate modality of astrology and energy work and this NLP. And NLP tends to be, in my opinion, this is why I went and studied it. It's just, it provides very rapid change. It's a lot of the process with the psychedelics or even some of these modalities is just bringing it to the surface, and that's it, and then working with it. It could be, like you said, through the prayer, meditation, but it's really like even just acknowledging like, oh, okay, now you're seeing something that was never integrated into your whole self, so that's like just the beginning of the journey. And I don't think this is all bad. I think some people might be scared, like, oh, wow, that sounds like something really intense from my childhood might come up, or, traumatic situation. But, if you're looking for happiness and fulfillment and to feel better and to actually grow as a human being, like that is part of the process. It's the hero's journey. We do go down and then come back up. It's like anything in life. There's that cycle. It's the seasons. It's spring through winter. It's birth and death, and we are constantly birthing and dying in ourselves. So there's nothing really to be afraid of. But the timing, I think we can also see very quick results in just one little session. Like I said, a small dose with proper space holding and support. It was something I was already working on, though. That was the one thing that was really interesting. It wasn't about like, oh, let me get this one question answered. It was something that I had already been working on for a long time and trying to understand it better. I think the question, I think it's good to have an intention, and I think it's totally fine to go in with like one question. But in my opinion, what I've seen over the years is whatever comes through that experience is always connected to that question. Because there is no separation of ourselves, right? So if I ask, why am I having trouble getting past, like I actually went through this many years ago where I was like, why can't I seem to make past a certain amount of money? Like it was kind of a weird thing, right? But it was also like, it wasn't about the money. It was something much deeper that I knew. I was like, there's something deeper here. It's not just like I'm not working hard enough or I don't have the right strategies. I could feel that it was just layers, right? And through various modalities, including reading books and studying and working with different, people to support me, and then asking this question and going in with a certain intention, which is interesting, right? It's like, oh, working with medicine to find out why you're not making money. But it was really interesting. It came through like really deep ancestral roots, like this rooted belief around not feeling safe on Earth. Yeah. Like, and I actually think that's a huge part of the world's problems right now. So many people don't even feel safe to be alive on Earth, like to know that you belong here.
Yeah.
Like the root of, I think, a lot of our problems is belonging and knowing that we're safe and held, especially when we look around and the world feels really scary. And so there's some really deep stuff that you can do in these sessions that actually, they're not painful. It's like, okay, I saw something about my dad and his pattern. Okay. And then I saw something else in my mom. And it wasn't bad. It was actually, it brought a lot more compassion. Like, wow, okay, they came from parents that were Depression era. And then I had compassion for that and that journey. And, like, oh, they were just trying to, survive and this and that. And I could see this deeper journey that had nothing to do with the actual money itself. It had to do with, essentially trauma. And it's not even their personal trauma. It's connected to the entire world's trauma. It's like being a human in this dual world that we're living in is a trauma in itself. It's like they say being born is a trauma.
Yeah.
And I'm not one, I don't even throw around that word trauma very much, but this is where it's really fascinating to see, like, oh, maybe something will come up. It might make you cry. That's okay. And then, you know what? Maybe a day later, weeks later, or even months later, it makes sense. Sometimes the integration of a psychedelic session, yeah, you can get it. I've had things come to fruition like years later where I'm like, oh my God, now I understand that.
Yeah.
I didn't really understand it. Oh, now it makes sense. And yeah, and by the way, it's normal to be like pissed and angry. Like trust me, there's one thing I've asked for a long time and I've only gotten one like tiny answer once. And it's not a big deal because I know I do a lot of other work on it in a different way, but it's fascinating. I'm like, why is it never giving me answers around that? But, maybe the medicine is not the right tool for that particular situation. And that's why I do believe that it's never about just the medicine. It's whatever is working for you in your particular case. Everybody has a different energetic field, a different, patterning that's running them. And I don't know, going and blowing your brains out with some bufo DMT might not be good for you, but it might be amazing for this other person, which, that's an example I've seen multiple times. I've seen it change people's lives in an instant in a beautiful, great way. And I've also seen it totally rock people's worlds for like 2 years straight and get completely like burned to the ground, So it's like, there's, who's to say what's right or wrong? And that's where I'm always very, like, I try to watch what I say. And this is why I reference the media, because the media loves like these big claims. And it's like, well, no, we are all individual human beings. Like every single human has a different blueprint. Like no one has your exact life. It just can't exist because it's you, your soul. This is the soul approach. So you have to work with someone who addresses it from that way, where it's like, okay, there's not just one, like, I call it, by the way, I refer to it very often as the Amazon Prime effect. Like, especially in America, people are just so used to like, oh, I can just click to buy this and have it at my house within a day or two. And they think like, oh, well, I heard that this psychedelic will just fix my depression or cure my anxiety or help me solve this problem with my partner. It's like, well, it doesn't quite work that way. And sometimes it might,
Beth, there's 3 substrands in what you just shared with us that I want to tie together. You mentioned that you've seen people have these sudden transformations that are beautiful. And again, to be clear, we both know, based on everything that you said so far, that not every transition or transformational journey that people have is sudden and over dramatic, but it is a possibility, and it is one that, due to this Amazon Prime effect, people are keenly aware of. And so you've said that sometimes when these sudden transformations occur, they can be beautiful and wonderful, and then sometimes, as you more or less said, like the house can burn down. And these sorts of stories are the most memorable as well. You also mentioned that we're each operating within different energy fields, and those energy fields relate to the third thing that you referenced earlier in passing, but I want to talk about a little bit more deeply, which are the stakeholders, the other individuals that are operating within our orbit, our spouses, our children, our friends, our employees, are co-founders, if you've co-founded a business, the investors that you as an entrepreneur may be to some extent beholden to, your customers or your clients, depending on the nature of your business. All of those things are within the energy field, and integration, sometimes as I've heard it discussed, in fact, almost always as I've heard it discussed, has focused on the individual transformation. Obviously, it's your life. You have to be beholden to your own life first. But those who might be influenced by decisions that you make as an entrepreneur or a successful executive or something like that are going to have their own energy fields, and very possibly a lot more, disrupted if these sorts of transitions happens. And particularly with spouses or maybe parents or close friends, there may be an intense reaction negatively to that, of fear, I would imagine, particularly with a spouse. How do you help entrepreneurs navigate that? What advice do you have for business people or others in a professional setting who are concerned or who may be facing questions around that issue?
Yes, that's a big one. It's actually one of the number one rules of medicine experiences is do not make any sudden changes in the next like few weeks.
Yeah.
Like really, like leave it space. There is a tendency of people to, I mean, I've seen this. It's become a meme out there actually, where people are like, they come out of the experience the same night or the next morning, and they're like, they're claiming something, right? Like, oh my God, I'm here to be a shaman. That's the meme one, right? Or, you know what? I'm going to sell my house and move to the top of the mountain and play guitar forever. It's like, okay, wait a few weeks and see if you still feel that.
Yeah.
So that's the number one thing. Don't make any big decisions within definitely not in the first week, but I would wait like at least 3 weeks to even start thinking about big decisions, especially when it comes to, the ecological system in your entire life. Your partners, your kids, your business stakeholders, anybody. I think it's healthy if you can talk to them beforehand. This is why preparation is a big part of the actual journey. I'm a fan of radical transparency. Tell the people that are close to you what you're stepping into and why, so they can hopefully be of support. I think one of the things I'm not a fan of is when people are like, well, I'm going to go do it anyways, even though my partner disapproves of this. Well, already it's creating a little friction there, right? Especially if you're in a partnership that's a marriage, if it's maybe you're seeing someone after 1 month and they don't like what you're doing, okay, maybe then you make a decision. But yeah, it's the ecology of, how are the important people in your lives going to be affected by what happens to you? And that could actually bring up, it can bring up some big stuff, especially if it's like, well, wait a second. You're changing for the positive, and now that threatens me and my identity. I mean, these are like layers that come up. But this is where hopefully by the time you've decided to go step into a journey like this, you've discussed it with these key stakeholders and they're on board with you. Then, there's a way to talk to them about it from a grounded, integrated place, maybe not proclaiming huge things the next day. This is why a lot of people suggest, keeping a journal and journal like right afterwards. Just get all the ideas out so you're not like going around telling people you've become Jesus, like these are the psychedelic industry memes, because we've seen them all. I've seen the wildest things over the years where people are like still kind of feeling the medicine and they're like, oh my God, I'm going to go do this. And it's like, you know what? But this is why it's important to have someone there to guide you through, okay, now that you've come down, you've gotten some sleep and real life begins again.
Yeah.
Now it's like, okay, how do you start making small changes, a little bit at a time? For example, I had something, many years ago, it was like 12, 13 years ago. It was a vision that showed me something that seemed like, in my opinion, kind of unbelievable, but very beautiful. And I held it, and I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool. I wonder if my life could ever be like that. Like, that was the question. It's like, is that showing me my reality or is that showing me a fantasy? And that's the one thing with psychedelics in general. They're kind of trickstery. But I do believe anything in life is possible. This was actually just showing me a life of doing work that I loved and making lots of money and helping people that were just like all my friends. And it was showing me dancing through a beautiful field.
Wow.
Don't ask. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. But at the time I was actually running 2 businesses at once, and my other business was freaking hard. Like, it was hard business. Like, that was a lot of work. And I was like, I wasn't doing terribly, but it was not hugely profitable. It was just challenging work. Like, it was nonstop. I mean, it was, 7-day a week type business. And it showed me this vision, but it was so kind of esoteric that it didn't give me any details. It wasn't like, here's what you're going to do. No. It was just this beautiful vision. So what I did, and this is what I recommend for people, is I journaled on it. I can remember it very clearly to this day. And I started to hold it kind of like a prayer or an intention. People don't like that word prayer, but like hold it as like a what if, just get curious. That's what I always do with any of these things that come through psychedelics. Like even talking about psychedelics publicly, when that started coming through meant, I was already a business coach.
Yeah.
And I was already doing a lot of psychedelics for, 25, 30 years. I kept getting messages about coming forward and talking about my psychedelic path. And I was like, no way, never, never, never. This is private. And it kept, coming through. So then I was like, you know what, let me just sit with this. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to just change my business overnight, but let me get curious. And then my real life, my life just started unfolding and showing me the kind of golden nuggets on the road that led to the natural next step of like, oh, this thing that I've been having come through, it seems like right now is exactly when I'm ready to do it. I also had coaches and people helping me through this. Same thing with that vision. It was like, I don't know what this even means, but you know what? It felt really good. So let me just play with it. And I'm telling you, it was like within a year and a half, like my whole life and business and career just started to change. And it was almost as if I didn't do anything, even though I did. But you know what I mean? I think it was just holding it with care, like curiosity and care. And that's the one thing with any of these psychedelic visions that come through. Sometimes none of them, like things come through that make zero sense. I've had another one come through that showed me a particular exact building, like a place with an exact, and it keeps showing like the same vision. It's been years. And there was a time where I finally started sharing it with some friends because the vision showed it with some friends. And then it was like, my friends were like, oh, let's get curious about this, and then they're holding it. And then it's like, suddenly there's a piece of land up for sale that we're actually looking at this weekend.
Come on.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, we're still like, this could be 10 years down the road. Who knows? But do you know what I mean? It's like, but this is it, and you don't need psychedelics to do this. If you have an idea that sounds ridiculous in your life that just comes through the shower, right? I get ideas in the shower or on a run.
Yeah.
And you are like, no way. I don't know how, it's like, forget the how, put the how aside and just start to play with it. This is how, by the way, this is how electricity was invented.
Yeah.
This is how, planes are now all over our sky, like it's a totally normal thing. This is everything in our reality comes from the mind, whether people want to believe this or not. If you stop and think about it, this didn't exist when I was born, this didn't exist. And now it's weird if people don't have a smartphone.
Yeah.
That, I wouldn't say it was all just Steve Jobs, but it came from this collective, this mind and a few people that were curious. They were like, well, what if we could have a computer in the size of our hands one day? Well, and that was supposedly the story, right?
I totally, by the way, buy into what you're saying about us being co-creators of our reality or direct creators. But one bit of pushback that I would have given before I entered into my current life phase, and I don't think is completely unreasonable, goes back as to something that you mentioned much earlier in the conversation, which is the economic environment and the global instability that we're enduring. So for those who might be watching or listening to this episode at any point in the future, this is being recorded in September of 2025. And so there is a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of political turmoil. There are numerous wars going on right now. There are things like tariffs and immigration, accelerated deportations, all that sort of thing that are creating sort of a culture of anxiety and a sense of chaos and just a whole bunch. And I'm not making a political statement one way or the other about them. I'm purely saying this as a descriptive matter. And someone could push back and say, well, Scott, are you and Beth seriously expecting me to say that I have control over what the president of the United States and Vladimir Putin are doing? I mean, I wish I had that much power over my reality, but Beth and Scott, y'all come on. What would you say to that sort of person? Because if what you're saying is true, that everything from the physical environment or the astrological settings to these global energy fields that we're operating in can affect anything, and at the same time we're saying we control our reality, people might have increased skepticism about the message that you're sending forth, putting all that together. And what would you respond with?
Oh, I love these questions. These are actually some of my favorite things to explore. So there's so many different approaches, but I think most people would agree that we are all in this together. Everybody who's alive right now on Earth, we're on this planet together, whether it's, like you're like, oh, well, I don't know those 7.99999 billion, right, people. It's 8 billion people on Earth, and we're all in this together.
Yeah.
We all have minds, and we are all collectively creating, what they call the collective unconscious, right? It's like there is this collective mind on Earth. People hate to hear this, and I don't like to hear it because it makes me sad, but it's, to what extent are we actually creating everything that we're experiencing in our reality right now? Everyone likes to point the fingers at some crazy guys running, a few countries, and I don't like them. Like everybody is like, I think our world leaders do pretty much all suck at this point. Like, I can't even name anyone that I like out there, but, and I don't believe it's a side or a color. It's like, it's the collective unconscious. We're all in this together. So we can point at like particular instances or people, but it's so much deeper than that. And actually, there was a talk, God, when was this? Like 2 years ago, I heard Charles Eisenstein give like a really great talk on this about this is where if we actually want to solve the world's problems, we need to address them at such deeper layers than just like who's doing what and what the policy is and what color and what side you're on. It's so much deeper. It's like deep collective trauma. And it's also, well, how much are we creating the, destruction of this planet? And then what? Then what happens? Maybe we'll go extinct and we'll never know. Or maybe we need to destroy it all to create something that actually works. I don't know. I don't want to see that because, I think there's a lot of people that predict that. It's like, well, we're in this Kali Yuga where it's kind of this, like the world needs to crumble in order to have this beautiful golden age be born, which by the way is, thousands and thousands of years. I like to think a little more optimistically. It's like, well, maybe we need things to get so bad for people to wake up and start to make different decisions and see things differently. So as above, so below. What I was just talking about before, when someone sees something in a psychedelic experience and they're like, oh my God, that's hard to see and that was not what I was expecting, but now you have to deal with it. It's in your field. It's up for a reason. It's there to be integrated. I do believe what we're experiencing on a global level is here like getting louder because people are so distracted and not listening and not seeing that I even literally just posted something about this on my Instagram story last night about the earth is getting pissed, I think, a lot of the indigenous traditions that I've studied under, and I wouldn't say it's like there's one answer of why things are the way they are, but we are completely out of balance with the nature and the earth itself as humanity. And it's not, I look around at my friends and most of them are in balance, right? Like it's hard for me to see that. But if you look on a global scale, there's a complete imbalance, which of course we can all point the finger capitalism. It's like, well, it's because of capitalism. Well, okay, then what happened? Like what happened along the way? It's the human ego, right?
Yeah.
It's like, but even deeper than that, like, cause I've been exploring this. By the way, this has come through my ceremonies since day one. These big global themes have been a big part of my journey, which is probably why I've just been called to this. Yeah, it's like, I spent a whole ceremony crying my butt off over capitalism. But then it was like, wait a second. It's not just the systems that are failing. It's what caused those systems in the first place. And that's where it's really interesting to dig deep into. And that's what Charles Eisenstein was talking about was, like if you look at even capitalism in itself, which I think is the root of a lot of the issues, is it's fear-based. It's based in this survival mentality that is like, I'm not safe here. I am not belonging here. I'm not taken care of by the earth. I must, own water. I must own plants. I must take the earth. I must, pillage every natural resource instead of the opposite way, which I think is kind of, this is my prayer is like, the more people are starting to really feel this, like everything not working, because it is kind of like, they call it the meta crisis, right? It's like, every department on the earth is going through a major crisis right now. And there's also a major awakening happening, and I just talked about it this weekend with someone. I do believe we're seeing both happen at once. I think depending on your lens of the world, it's hard for people to see like, wow, is there a positive movement on earth right now? I don't know. But I do believe there is. I think as things, I think it's going to be this kind of intensification. So as things intensify in the kind of negative way, there's also going to be more and more people being called towards, the path of spirituality or meditation or turning to plant medicines or psychedelics because, they're like just sick of feeling this way for so long. So they're like, let me try this other way. And then they start to realize, you know what? I should take better care of my body. I should take better care of the earth. Oh, wait, I really want to live more connected to the earth. Oh, maybe I'm not even connected to my job anymore. Even that whole industry maybe needs to go, and I think we're seeing this happen where it's like, I think, I say one of the biggest ways to make change, is like, just stop supporting these things that you don't believe in. Like dollars talk, and we can't just pull capitalism out from under us right now. I mean, maybe it will happen, who knows? But it's like when you mention all these, like the wars and the world leaders and, the systems that are not working, my question is always like, okay, if all of those literally crumbled, like right now, like if they're, because I believe they are crumbling, but if they were just gone in an instant, we would have no choice but to create new with our minds, create with our hearts and our souls. Like it's like, then what? Then there's a blank slate. Well, okay, maybe we need to do things differently. So in the end, it's still like, oh yeah, things are wild and crazy and bad. And, but then also we have an opportunity to see that, but also choose another better way. And this is what people talk about when they talk about creating the new earth, or co-creating the new earth. But we literally have the choice to, maybe I can't stop the war in the Middle East by myself right now. But, there's been groups that have studied this and done work around this, the Heart Math Institute. Imagine if there was a majority of people on the planet, like if it was actually, over 4 billion people, really gave their energy to prayer and, like focusing their attention and their intention on stopping this war. Maybe if there were people that decided to become leaders that come from a path of spirituality and a good heart that actually want to see a better world, maybe that would actually shift. But we need to have this kind of this turning point, this tipping point. There's so many names for this. It's like the indigenous said, like 144,000. By the way, I think they might have said that when the earth was way less populated. I think it's going to have to be more than that, but I think there's that global shift and it's going to have to happen. So as above, so below, yes, we can create anything we want in our lives and we can actually see the world differently. And that's when I think, I've talked about this so much in the last couple years. We have to learn how to hold both. Like we have to learn how to hold the grief. I've done a lot of grief work. I've done a grief tending training with this amazing elder. I've actually interviewed him on my podcast. We have to learn how to be in right relationship with the pain, the destruction, the grief of all these, the global, the earth itself is like literally crying. And we also have to hold this vision for what do we want? We can't just focus on the bad because then there's nothing filling its place. That's why I say capitalism, I don't know. I've kind of been watching the kind of decentralized monetary systems for a very long time and kind of playing them a little bit. I don't know as much as I'd like to, but okay, there's a whole system that's been created in the very recent past that, not to say it's going to solve all the problems, but it's interesting to stop and look and see well, that's new. I'm sure you and I are probably around the same age, but we remember when all of a sudden, now there's apps. There's these we can go stay in someone's house on the other side of the planet with this computer in our hands. That didn't even exist 20 years ago. And that was not long ago. So that's where it's if we see the possibility of what have we created? And again, not to say an app or a phone is a good creation, but to see it's the duality. And we do have this ability to actually create the world that we want to live in. And I think I really believe that it starts with each of us doing our own inner work to start from within. Like when you're happier because you're loving what you do for your living, you're thriving in your life, I mean, yeah, things are not always easy, of course, like it's human nature. But generally, it's like you're fulfilled, you're inspired, you wake up like happy to be alive. Imagine if most of the people on earth actually felt that way, then they probably wouldn't be, road raging at the person on the highway or, pulling a gun on them or, it's because then they're spiritually fulfilled and happy and they're not projecting all their anger and traumas out onto the external. And I think that's, I mean, it's, I've talked about it. Some of this is like stuff that a lot of people are like, oh my God, I can't even hear that. But we have to bring a lot of this collective shadow to the light. It's like we have to integrate our anger, our hatred, our darkness, and what's happening is so many people have just been pushing it away, distracted. It's like, I don't want to see my darkness. I don't want to own my own shadows. But if we can own them individually in ourselves, well, maybe Putin will, and maybe, everybody in the Middle East that is essentially killing one another. It's like, well, maybe they could actually stop and say, like, oh, you know what? Maybe I don't want to hurt anybody. Maybe I'm just happy and want to, go on in this beautiful way. It's hard because it sounds so like. And I always try to watch, like, is this spiritual bypassing? And I don't think it is, because, it's definitely not spiritual bypassing when you're doing shadow work in yourself and then in the collective. But at the same time, if we only focus on what's wrong and what's bad, how are we ever going to replace it with something that's good and positive that we actually want to see? And that's the hard part, I think, for a lot of people. It's actually a lot easier to just say, like, oh, that can't happen. Our world just sucks and everything's being destroyed. And now I'm going to just be depressed. It's like, well, that's hard,
Or live through the ongoing dopamine pump that you can have by being angry all the time, which is less than constructive too, in my opinion.
Exactly. And that's where I do think more and more people are starting to wake up and see this, like, oh, you know what? Like, let me take some responsibility for my own happiness, my life in itself. Like, if something's not working in your life, I say there's always one common denominator, and it's you. It's your life. It's not your boss that's rude. Yeah, maybe your boss is rude, but guess what? If you start to change, because I've been through this, I had 15, 20 years in corporate America and then tech startup world. When you start to change and your whole entire lens of the world starts to change, of your world, like just your own world, not the world, but you'll start to see people around you will start to shift, and it's almost miraculous. It's like, wow, suddenly my boss is being nicer to me. What's going on? Try it out. It's crazy. I mean, it really works. And then all you do is you start proving it to yourself over and over and over. Like, wait, if I just created a better relationship with my boss, that means I can create other things that make me happier, that make my life better, And so it's like, again, get curious and try it out. I just think a lot of people, like, on some level, like really want on a, maybe a not conscious level, like being miserable or like being angry or like pointing the fingers externally, because guess what? It's sometimes a lot harder to feel our own shadows and our own depth of grief and sadness and darkness inside. And that's probably the hardest work that can be done out there. And psychedelics are very good for that. They bring up a lot of stuff where you're like, ugh. But when you bring it up and work with it, then it's like life just becomes so much more beautiful and magical. And this is how psychedelics work, by the way. They don't just make you feel good. It's like they bring it up to heal what it is that's causing the initial pain in the first place. And then that's where you have lasting change. Because anybody can take a Prozac and feel good, but then, is it lasting? Is it really changing anything? Now they're finding more and more that it's actually not helping people. It's like it helps and then it doesn't even work. So yeah, long-winded answer.
No, I loved it. And one of the things I liked about this is ties in the specific substance that we talked about in most detail in this conversation, psilocybin, which you mentioned, but practically every guest that has discussed that substance on this show has also raised, enhances that sense of connectedness. And what you've done in this last section is really tie in the personal, what we're thinking about becoming, what we're doing, the choices that we engage in, how we integrate with psychedelics as portals to those changes can have a global impact, which again can then turn back and further shift the reality that we're creating. Now, I have one last question. I've been dying to ask this for a little bit now. I just can't help myself. Beth, so this plot of land that you were talking about with your friends, is there a meadow or a field or something in that where you can go dancing?
I will know this weekend. I don't know. That's what's funny. I'm actually curious to see if I see my vision in this land.
Well, here's my special request. Whenever that vision comes true and you are out there dancing in that field, I want a picture sent to me.
Totally. You'll come dancing.
Hey, I might come out there dancing with you. I bet you're a better dancer than me because practically anybody is. That being said, wow, what a conversation. There has been a lot that I could take away from this and will take away from this. But one of the things that I will land on that is just the most pragmatic thing is to remember that you're operating within an entire ecosystem, that you are responsible for your life, but it is also your responsibility to engage with your life in a way that shows wisdom and respect. So engaging stakeholders, having radical transparency, and then understanding the connection between the decisions that you make, what you do with the downloads that you may get from whatever psychedelic substance you engage in, engage with those respectfully and in light of all the stakeholders, and then wait for, I think what you said, those little gold nuggets or those breadcrumbs to come, and then follow them can have not just an impact on your specific purpose in the most narrow sense, but your purpose within a larger field that perhaps will be much more impactful than you can imagine. Beth, I'm sure you have a lot that you would like to leave with the audience as a last word. Is there anything that you want to reinforce that you said earlier, or anything that you didn't get a chance to say, but you feel, I'm not going to leave this conversation with Scott Mason and Webdelics until this is said? And if so, what might those things be?
No, it's really just, I'd say to people, if you're not feeling good or something is not working or you want to make a change or you feel stuck or, in a rut, this is where it's like, it's your responsibility. Take action, something like get a coach, get some support, work with someone that'll help you. But if you don't reach out, it's like, how is anyone going to know how to help you? And I always say, if you've been struggling for a long time, if there's something you're stuck with and you just feel blocked, like you can't get out, that's definitely a sign, but you have to be the one to say, like, you know what? I know there's got to be a better way. I want to be happy. I want to be fulfilled. I want to live an inspiring, magical life. And, one of the very first steps is just actually saying yes to the life you want. So please reach out for support with anybody. If people need recommendations besides me, I have a list of other people that I can refer out to. I just really believe in this day and age, I don't know how anyone survives as a human without some form of support. It's challenging. It's also beautiful. And now is the time. So, and we need to, we need you. If you have a purpose within, or if you have a business that has some kind of impact and purpose written into it, I do believe these are the businesses that need to grow more than ever. Like now is the time. We need you on all hands on deck. So if you're stuck with your business, yes, please reach out for support.
Well, on the subject of reaching out, I will let everybody know that all of your contact information is in the show notes for the audio platforms, and it is directly beneath this video here on YouTube. But talk to us a little bit about some things that you have going on and your preferred way to connect with folks who are going to also be curious about the work that you do, whatever happens with that building, as well as their own sense of stuckness or their desire to be part of a changed purpose that may impact so many others.
Thank you. Well, you can always reach out to me on my website. I actually have 2 free gifts that you can sign up for, and it'll put you on my email list where I announce things and, send occasional emails about psychedelics, about business, about the world. So email is my preferred way of communication, but I'm also accessible on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Or or through my own podcast. I'm on YouTube, I'm on all the other platforms, and I'm pretty easily accessible. Just reach out and let me know. And I do offer coaching in various forms. I have a few different kinds of programs depending on what people are looking for and where they're at. I don't know if I'm running, I usually have a big group program that I run once a year. I'm not sure if I'm running or not. I shall know by, I don't know, November, December. So if that interests you. And then I do have some shorter programs, including some programs that are just about psychedelics, and also some very low cost courses for sale on my website. So yeah, thank you.
Serving people where they are, that is always deeply appreciated. Beth, anyone who has watched or listened to this will surely understand why you were listed as one of Webdelics' top 100 thought leaders, influencers, movers and shakers in the plant medicine psychedelic world. It has been a pleasure talking to you in a lot more depth.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to press the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, or make sure that you subscribe to us on your favorite audio platform. If you're listening to this on an audio platform, please leave us a 5-star review. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you put a comment right below the caption here. We want to hear what you're thinking. We want to know what your reactions are. Then once you've done that, follow Webdelics on all of our social media platforms. And don't forget to go to our website at webdelics.com. That's webdelics.com. Sign up for our newsletter, where you're going to learn more about a whole host of things, including people like Beth Weinstein. And then make sure that you come back once more for another episode of the Webdelics podcast.